Welcome once again to a wonderful, wonderful program on Ponte Politique. Thando lwethu kadlanga umntu uyengwayo umalinga undima. Unkumbuzo has once again is welcoming you on this wonderful program. Unfortunately today, due to load shedding and all other aspects that are relating to it, we had to start a little bit late because of some problems and some technical issues. So we are just experiencing some slight problems a little bit. Just give us a minute. We are going to come to you properly. Just give us one more minute. We are going to just fix these small problems of technology on our side. Just give us one moment and we will be on top of the game. Yes, welcome. Thank you very much. Welcome to Ponte Politique. Thando lwethu dlanga umntu uyengwayo undima. Umalinge is your host once again today, and let us quickly apologize for the problem that we had just experienced. First of all, it was the stage 2 load shedding that has been our daily lives, but also technology has showed us flames just a few minutes ago, but we are back. Thank you very much for holding on and being with us. We are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Remember, try and follow us and click on the subscribe button and on the follow up button as well. We are going to be discussing a very, very emotive topic today with with two of our great thinkers and critical thinkers in our political discourse in South Africa. But we will talk to that in a few minutes. One of our guests also has experienced, he's also load shedding, so he will only be on a voice call. So we are going to start. Let us run quickly to it. As a way of context, I would like you to see this video that has taken place over the past week. Let's go and give each other a context. Apartheid flag, public or private display, does it matter? That is the question we are going to answer.
Arguments by AfriForum in an attempt to legalize the display of the 1928 apartheid flag. AfriForum is appealing against the Equality Court order that ruled that gratuitous display of the old national flag constitutes hate speech, unfair discrimination, and harassment. Let's take you live to those proceedings.
Introduced on May 31st, 1928. The Foundation holds that any gratuitous display of the old flag constitutes hate speech and harassment prohibited under the Equality Act. A display would be gratuitous if it does not serve any genuine journalistic, academic, or artistic purpose in the public interest. AfriForum has articulated an alternate view that even gratuitous displays of the old flag constitute protected expression under Section 16 of the Constitution, and has indicated that it would oppose any application for an order declaring displays of the flag prohibited. Accordingly, the Foundation has resolved to approach the Equality Court for a declaratory order to the effect that any gratuitous display of the old flag constitutes hate speech and harassment prohibited under sections 10 and 11 of the Act. Now,
as a way, there is a way, as a way of providing an introduction into what has been taking place, and over the past week, fortunately, that gives us a good insight. So today we are going to be having Kim Heller, one of the critical thinkers and authors of a book, a great book and a critical book that speaks on white privilege, a book titled No White Lies, Black Politics and White Power in South Africa. We've got Kim as one of our guests, but also at the same time, we've got Dr. Lunga Mantashe, who is also a deputy president of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. Welcome, Kim. Greet our viewers at home who are watching with us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be on this program, and I'm really looking forward to engaging and also to be on a panel with such an esteemed guest and a host. And thank you once again for the invitation. I'm to blame for delaying the program, but I'm so glad to be here in camera. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for agreeing also to be as. No, it's not you who is to blame. It is the state government and the state governance, including their institutions, for dealing with us with this load shedding, which is supposed to have been dealt with long time ago, since 2008. And also, we've got Dr. Lunga Mantashe on the other side, the deputy president of the PAC. Unfortunately, because he's on load shedding, he will only be able to speak with us on audio. Dr. Mantashe, good evening, sir. Thank you for being with us. This is it an evening or an afternoon? This afternoon or evening?
It's a good evening. It's a good evening to you, who has no load shedding, and I should blame Kim, obviously, for load shedding on my part, because I had no load shedding at 1800 hours, and then yeah, but let's hope for a great, very big discussion on a matter of such national importance.
Yeah, no, thank you very much to our guests. And we are also asking those that are listening and watching with us on all the platforms that we are on, please, the comments and the questions, we are taking them right through the program. This is an interactive conversation. We are not having an interview where we want to put people in a corner, but we are having interaction. So what we are going to do is we are going to just give a minute or so to both of our guests to just give us an opening remarks as to how are they looking at this discussion and how are they looking at this topic, because we are asking a question in relation to what has taken place over the week, where the AfriForum, one of the Afrikaner movements, has took the Nelson Mandela Foundation to a Supreme Court of Appeal, where there is a judgment at an equality court that relates to the utilization or to the using of a flag. It is called an apartheid flag, but it is an old South African flag. It's not an apartheid flag per se. To use it in public or in private. That judgment has clearly stated that that flag can only be utilized for artistic purposes, for academic purposes, and some other. There were three out of that. So AfriForum raises an argument and says, the judge at the Equality Court erred, and on the basis of that error, they want the Supreme Court of Appeal to come to a different understanding, because from them, the usage of that old South African flag means the freedom of expression. That is an overall legal argument that they have presented. However, the Nelson Mandela Foundation is presenting a totally different argument. So I'm giving you, let me start with you, Kim, with your 1 minute and 30 seconds opening remarks, and then we will get to Dr. Mantashe on how you view this topic generally. It's over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. And I'm glad that the doctor blamed me for all the woes, because it's true. Because white South Africans in this country for centuries have been the most unwelcome and unappreciated guests. Not only have we stolen land and never shown remorse, but now we have the audacity to want to put up a flag representing everything rather than repenting for great acts of inhumanity. We want to foist this in the direct visual line of people who have suffered, our fellow Black South Africans, so deeply. But I'm looking forward to much debate, but perhaps as an opening thing, I would like to say I wish organizations like the Nelson Mandela Foundation would be more concerned with the issue of land than the issue of flags, because that's the real question. And I do believe that, is my time over already? Can I say one more thing?
No, continue. No, continue.
The one thing I think we need to recognize is some very inconvenient truths, that in 1994, all we had was a stillborn liberation. And the ANC mantra has been, do not disturb white privilege and power. Unfortunately, we didn't see a party or Black consciousness party such as the PAC come into power. It's no accident, because they would never have allowed the situation. So as much as we condemning AfriForum tonight, we should be condemning a government who has supersized whiteness, white power, and the white voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Kim. Dr. Mantashe, your 1 minute, 30 seconds starts now.
Yeah, I think it's important to begin from the premise of the AfriForum's website. The website of AfriForum spells out what the Afrikaner people in the form of their representation by AfriForum stand for exactly. They stand precisely and exclusively for the protection of the interests of Afrikaner people in South Africa. This is why in the midst of a negotiation in the early 90s, a piece of land was bought by Boshoff in Orania, and they established themselves a Volksstaat in order to secure this exclusive existence, because there's this ongoing view that white people in this country should have an exclusive existence, an exclusive culture, and have for themselves only what they would call self-determination. It's true what Kim says, the fundamental flaw was in the negotiation. And so now white people think that they have the right and an entitlement to keep an apartheid flag, as obviously Kim puts it, as an expression of how successful they have been in terms of dispossession. Otherwise, in no country in the world could a dispossessor continue to want to keep their flag unless they had succeeded in political subjugation, economic exploitation, and social degradation of the peoples of that country. And that's what we are faced with in South Africa. I'll pause here and hope that the discussion obviously will interact with some of the issues that Kim and I have raised as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for those opening remarks. And immediately then these there are 2 or 3 points that both of you have engaged on. And what I would love going forward is that even if I'm not posing the question, Kim or Dr. Mantashe, if there's something that you would like to respond to from one of you as the guest, you can engage on it. It's a conversation between us and also hoping with the viewers at home. So the viewers at home, we've got Kim Heller, an author and a political activist, a critical writer, and Deputy President of the PAC, Dr. Lunga Mantashe. And we're asking a question: the hoisting of the apartheid flag, old South African flag, whether in public or in a private space, does it matter in one way or the other? Kim, you spoke of the lack of focus or the distraction in relation to the question of the flag and the land. How would you want to unpack that particular point that you were saying? Because I picked up that you were saying the flag is just a minor thing. Rather, focus on other important aspects. which in your understanding, what could those aspects be? You spoke about the land. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yes. First of all, I don't want to negate the emotional torment that the symbol of the apartheid flag represents. I'm a settler. I'm the real foreigner in this country. So I can't speak of the emotional pain when somebody sees that flag. So I don't want to undermine that. But I do feel that there's a politics of distraction in this country, deliberately so. So we have this, I think I wrote an article, which is in my book, about the fact that we're even having debates about land in this country is problematic. And I think what the doctor said is very important. He spoke about interest. And what we see in this country is that politics is working in the interests of whiteness. So AfriForum, in truth, they're not doing anything wrong. They're actually just representing their constituency very well. What's happening, though, with Black political parties and organizations, in my opinion, is that there's the seed of disunity. Now, that is an orchestrated thing. I speak about it as the teething gel of white supremacy, that there's no unity around issues like land. And to be fighting about an apartheid flag on land that you don't even own, to me, there's a big contradiction. And I think it's easy to keep people busy speaking about other things, about factional ANC things and load shedding and things. But we take our eye off the real issue, which is land has to be the core of everything. The second thing is control over the economy, where we speak about Eskom and we speak about state capture, but the real state capture in this country has been the work of whites. And that has been hidden, even in the Zondo Commission. So the issue of the flag, it's a symbol. In fact, if we look at where South Africa is, we're still a colony. So perhaps it's an appropriate thing to have this vulgar flag of pain and Black pain, because we still have that. And I say this with much personal reflection from myself as a white South African who, we the foreigner, I see the xenophobia and I want to cry, because that is just symptomatic of white supremacy, actually. But just in conclusion, and I know I'm going around in a way, I just think that we need to focus on what is absolutely critical, and the flag is just a symbolic symptom of where we are. We're a colony, we're not free. And I think that should be given the attention more than anything. We shouldn't be marching for the flag, we should be marching for land. Thank you.
And importantly, from what you are raising, therefore, if we are moving from the premise of your argument that we are a settler colony, maybe then AfriForum has got every right to raise that flag, considering that they understand, even if they're using the law, which is of the new South Africa, but they understand that the fundamental point of South Africa as we see it is a settler colonial construction. So we'll come back and rebuild on that. Dr. Mantashe, any inputs on that or any submission? Because you spoke of the stance and the interest of organizations like AfriForum, and you spoke of the entitlement and exclusiveness, which Kim speaks about extensively on her book, which we are going to talk to before we close this show. Any further clarification on those points that you were raising earlier in your opening remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the points is one which Kim has talked about, and that's the question of a flag without land. Actually, this is a country with no flag. The flag that we have, I think, Thando, you had a discussion the other day about the flag, the construction of the very flag, kind of as a symbol of a multiracial South Africa as constructed by white people. If you go back to the times of Oppenheimer, Nikki's father, in the 40s, who became part of the parliament, one of his thoughts actually came true post-1994. His thinking was they needed to integrate a portion of the so-called educated classes of the Black population into the white man's company called South Africa, Sobukwe correctly called South Africa a white man's PTY Ltd. It truly is, isn't it? And so post 1994, what you saw was the black elite coming in, getting integrated, led by the icon Nelson Mandela, post the negotiation process. So the point that Kim raises about flags without land is quite a central point. But there are two dimensions here of oppression. The first dimension is dispossession, which is primary. The second one is the flags, the symbols, which are the symbols of conquest and symbols of cultural status, this idea of cultural supremacy, call it imperialism in nature. Because AfriForum is the first to go to the United States whenever there are talks about land and say, hey, you need to sanction those folks there, because what they want to do is to take away the basis of our power. And so you can see this idea that when you look at a flag as an expression of power, domination, supremacy, imperialism, you can see why. I can understand from where I'm sitting why AfriForum wants to keep this flag, because this flag is not just a souvenir, because it's not something that happened in the past. It's something that happens in the present, something they need to preserve, something they need to keep creating a misdirection in the form, for example, of something like Operation Tutula, to make people divert from, the fundamental causes of unemployment, inequality, poverty, landlessness, etc. And so I think Kim is quite accurate in the point that we need to focus on the framing principles of our situation. And the framing principle is not flags, it is dispossession. And once you get rid of dispossession, the flag falls off its own accord, or not of its accord, but it falls nevertheless. See? So I want to make that point. Yeah.
No, thanks for that, Dr. Mantash. In relation to that, Kim has argued as well in one of her writings that when she was asked what is the most brutal, honest thing that she speaks about in her book, and it's something that relates to the very same question or the same argument that you are raising. My plea, Kim says, to white South Africans is to return the stolen land and repent for apartheid and colonial atrocities. And on the basis of that, Kim, you speak about this submission that the fundamental argument, the fundamental problem in South Africa is the issue of the land and everything else. But amongst us as Black people, when we look at you as an expression of privilege. The fact that you are even able to write a book that is going to be speaking on that, about Black people and other issues, it makes for some people make a critical argument about you and your interest and your genuineness. How would you respond to that particular question of your genuineness and your expression as a person of privilege?
I actually completely love that question, and I completely accept it. My book has done very well, and I actually acknowledge that it wouldn't have been had fared so well if I was a Black person. Okay. And I acknowledge that. And, I don't believe that there is any such thing as a better white. I completely subscribe to Biko's philosophy. So I am a privileged South African. And I say there's no white person in this country, past, present, or future, that isn't a child of privilege. But what I've seen is that white people are not interested in showing remorse, and the fact that they're hoisting this flag is just symptomatic. And AfriForum is representative of the general white person in this country who has no moral compass. That's the truth. So yes, my privilege is correct. And in fact, there's nothing in my book that hasn't been said 1,000 times by more worthy people and ordinary Black South Africans. I had the same experience when I was one of the initial leaders of the EFF. I was a deputy Deputy Secretary General in Gauteng. And the media came for me. I had 43 requests for interviews. because it was as if it was worthy for a white person to be involved in the struggle. But there were hundreds, thousands of people around me, ordinary Black South Africans, who were not acknowledged. So I completely agree with that. And I speak from the point of privilege. And for people who've read my book, I say exactly that. And that is why it is difficult. All I can speak about is the truth from my perspective, that for Black people, we don't expect anything from white people. We've had multiple opportunities to show remorse, and we haven't. And in fact, we don't need an apartheid flag to go up to show that we own this country still, as the doctor is saying. You just have to look at the percentage of business control by Black people. It doesn't exist. We have to look at how much land is owned by Black people. It's no mistake that the first Minister of Land Affairs was a white man. I mean, these things are not mistaken. But I often say, just to conclude this point, it's not only I was a very firm ANC member in '94. It took me a long time to realize that the problem in this country is with the Charterist movement, because it was in 1955 that the ANC sold this country out. And we had organizations like the PAC who recognized that. Why are we arguing about a flag when in 1955 the government, the ANC said, let us share our land with white people? That is a life sentence of poverty for Black people. Yeah.
And I can hear Dr. Mantashe there is agreeing very, very much, and he seems to be very much interested in that. Dr. Mantashe, any input in relation to that point?
No, I mean, look, absolutely, it's true. The 1955 is actually quite interesting, because what it does is to set out a new framework before 1994. It becomes a precursor for 1994 in so many ways. But the fundamental way in which it becomes so is that what it says is, look, white people recognize that they can't continue to subjugate the African people, you see, in a direct fashion. They need Black people, they need Africans themselves to be able to do that successfully post-apartheid. If there is such a thing, crudely speaking, as post-apartheid. But if you follow the series of events, I think it gets us closer to the debate itself that we have today. 57% of South Africa's economy was nationalized, right? But 57%. In the lead up to 1994, we've seen, first of all, in the occasional paper in the 80s by the World Bank and the IMF, according to this occasional paper, what needs to happen is that state-owned enterprises need to be privatized. And the reason for privatizing them is to basically give them to white people who are now going to lose political power, who will now not necessarily have direct means of political control and political subjugation, but who will now have to rely on their economic base, which is as a consequence of settler colonialism, to continue to control the political processes of South Africa. And so what makes that discussion very important is that 1995 makes that possible by actually giving citizenship to white people in a country they've already taken by force and by violence, etc. So what it does is to actually, so the Freedom Charter validates colonialism. What it simply says is to beg from it its own recognition. What it does not recognize is that it cannot coexist. It has to be a subordinate to white settler colonialism.
Whiteness, probably.
So absolutely. And so the interesting thing about it is that South Africa is exactly as was imagined by the Freedom Charter. I'm not quite sure what the Freedom Charter wants, what else it wants. I mean, it's exactly as they imagined. And you can jump into the what's the thing, to the property clause, section 25, where, for example, we have got to, and they pretend that we don't have to buy the land when the section actually spells out that we have to, because it says we may get the land without having to pay for it. But then they tell us that this land is economic land in nature, and then they tell us we have to end up in a court of law to argue for whether we must pay slaves or not.
Oh no, and that code of law is founded on those colonial principles, and therefore it will hit you and kick you out. Let's hold your thought there. We are in conversation with Dr. Lungamantashe, the Deputy President of the PAC, and also Kim Heller, an author, a political analyst, and a critical thinker in the space of politics in South Africa. And we are asking those that are watching.
Or you've lost me, Thando.
No, we just hold on, Dr. Mantashe. We are asking those that are watching with us over the 3 platforms that we are flighting on to make a comment and make questions for our guests as we continue with our discussion. Kim, I remember you said earlier you are not negating the impact, the experiences of the Black people or the African people in South Africa in relation to what the flag represents. But also you are speaking to the fundamental problem that brings about the flag. And you then say AfriForum is actually representing such ideals, is representing a settler ideal. Now, what would you say is the best way to move forward instead of dealing with an issue of a flag, whether it is hoisted in public or in private? As a person who has been there from 1994 in the ANC, and you went to the EFF, and now you have begun to say you need to be an independent thinker, what would you advise us as a way forward in dealing with issues of this nature?
Yeah, I mean, I proudly say now I'm a recovering charterist, actually. So what we require, and it took me a long time to get there, I think there's this cognitive dissonance about ANC members, you know, they like, I'm a Kaiser Chiefs person, perhaps it's the same, that we just get stuck and we know there's no hope, but we keep going. But truly, the only thing is to change the philosophy. And if people follow me on Twitter, they'll be obsessed. They'll see me. I will always say that if there was one book in this country that was subscribed, and it was Steve Biko's, we would have a very different outcome. We wouldn't have Black children who are trying to more interested in white affirmation than being part of Black cultural richness in this country that has been totally diminished. And I think that what's happened is that white people have just eroded the cultural fabric as well as the political and economic fabric of people and of Black people. And that is a tragedy. It took me a long time to realize that the ANC is a government who's interested only in white power first and foremost. So I believe that the only way out of this, and I think is in movements such as the PAC, it is that Blacks are first. White should never be central to the discussion. I left EFF for various reasons, one of being recognition for me to say, what am I as a white gogo middle-aged person doing in a Black organization? Actually, I mean, am I crazy? Because Black white people had absolutely no value to any political discourse in this country. I mean, we are the problem. So we shouldn't be part of the solution. This is a Black country. It should be run by Black people. If white people want to be part of that, they must succumb to that. But they're not willing. I mean, the white people are not willing to change. And I wish Black people would recognize that, actually. And, one of the things, perhaps just in conclusion, and it's a very controversial thing that I've said, and I said, I'm not going to be popular with your listeners, because actually the doctor speaks so well about such a critical point about, like, Black people are being accommodated in their own country, on their own land. And I think I've said, if Black people just want the crumbs, maybe that's all they deserve, because Black people have to start fighting for what is rightfully theirs. And here I sound like I'm preaching from a white perspective, but white people look after their interests very well. Black people have almost outsourced their interests to white people and Black people.
Somebody else, yeah. No, that's correct. And we see that with the majority of even the politicians and the leading government also. We pick that up. Kim, before you get off, there's a very interesting part of this comment that is coming from Lungisi Dongwe. And he is saying he has spoken to a white male in Pietermaritzburg, Mgunguntu. And this guy who told him that even they as white people want to farm, but are kept outside of land ownership by the landholders. And that is a point. Maybe probably you'll be able to have an understanding on that. And then he then asked me if the PAC has a place for white people, and I think that question goes to Dr. Mantashe. So you can make a comment there, Kim, on the first part, and Dr. Mantashe will start his thoughts on the last part, and then we will continue with him.
I'll be
Kim?
short for a change of this. I have no sympathy with white people who claim poverty or landlessness in this country. To the Deputy President on that matter.
Dr. Mantashe, Dongwe asks a question there, and then you can make an input further, and you can engage Kim on what she was saying earlier. I'm allowing you both guys to have an interaction.
I think the white gentleman would have very well said that he was also poor, and he was wondering what we would need to do to, undo his situation. Or maybe one example of a white fellow begging in the streets would be use an example that, white people can be poor too, etc. But I mean, on a more serious note now, the argument of what would be the place of white people in a PAC-run government. So first of all, this is white people. Some white people are obsessed by this question. And that's why I think they asked Udong about it. The PIC makes the case that we don't think in terms of groups. Sobukwe was actually rebutting this idea of creating a multiracial South Africa, calling it racism multiplied, in the sense that it was meant to protect the interests of white people. For example, when you talk of property and you talk of individual property rights, you are not talking about the protection of the rights of Africans in that context. You are talking about the protection of the interests of the white people, because they are the ones who already own the land in this country as a consequence of the constructed illegal title deeds post-1913. And so the PAC, to answer that question, does not think in terms of groups. And that's what Sobukwe taught us. We think in terms of individuals. It is actually white domination that segments and segregate the people into various groups in order to protect its minority interests. The key question that faces us is whether the interests of the minority whites in this country must prevail over those of the majority African. And our answer as the PAC is no, it cannot be so. Secondly, we don't say that this land must go to a specific elite group of black people. Of course not. What we say is that we want to run a political economy that is socialist in content, because we are socialist in content. Being socialist in content, therefore, means that the gentleman that Dr. Dongwe met at Pietermaritzburg cannot make a reasonable individual claim to the land and extract profit and exploit workers in farms, etc., which is what is happening currently, both done by the 50,000 white farmers and the quite a few chunk of the black so-called farmers also. Yes, and so the answer to that is we don't think in terms of the interest of a white man or a black man in specific terms when we speak in economic terms. We speak of socialism.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mantashe, for that. Let's go direct now to what is the position that the AfriForum, strangely, is that they are at loggerheads with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, a multiculturalistic foundation, by the way. It's very strange. Now, what do you think AfriForum and apartheid flag argument at the Supreme Court of Appeal and hoisting the flag, what do you think that represents for a person who just wants a straightforward answer? What do you think those things represent?
It represents white arrogance, It represents white arrogance. The view that even your courts are our courts. We have more money to take you to courts. We are going to run you dry going to courts, because we designed the structure. It's our structure. We know the legal system far better than you do. And if we're not going to wave our flag, we want to keep it in our private rooms. If the courts that we created for you don't like that, we are also going to wave our flag in our rooms, and you're not going to do a damn thing about it. Because you know what? We own you. We own this thing. We own this country. And we designed every bit of the system you see. P.W. Botha was right in 1985, when he said, we created this country. He said, so, we created this country. And if God had wanted you to be rulers, he would have made you look like us. That's basically the kind of an argument in a nutshell, what we see there in that court of law. Yeah.
Kim, what do you think AfriForum and the apartheid flag represents?
Yes, I feel slightly intimidated by the deputy president because he's, actually, but let me try and add to his comment, which I think actually says it all, is that it's white arrogance. I mean, it's like supersized, to use a word of Cyril Ramaphosa when he was owning McDonald's. The white voice, instead of being diminished in the New Dawn and in the Rainbow Nation, has actually been supersized. Such is the arrogance of whiteness. I mean, it's at stage 8 if we had to talk about comparative terms in terms of load shedding. But the government has facilitated that. I mean, just look at the president who has gone and I see him dancing on stages with matric white women, girls, and celebrating birthdays. But he has yet gone to Marikana to pray with and ask for forgiveness from the widows of people who were slain in that time. So the government is allowing it. The media is allowing it. I was blocked by a very senior journalist when he referred to AfriForum as a civil rights organization rather than a racist organization. That we're allowing this. We have to take responsibility. Let me end there. Thank you.
So I mean, just to write on a point here. I mean, the whole idea that AfriForum is a civil rights organization is ridiculous. I mean, nothing could be more ridiculous. I mean, clothing arrogance with this notion of civil rights just because they can write it on their website that they were civil rights. They are not. They're a settler minority protectorate, which hides behind independence. Quite frankly, they are not even independent. They don't really hide that. I mean, if you go to the website and you look at it very seriously, it's all written there quite point blank. They are saying we protect white interests. That's our job, and we are going to do it. And they are doing it with distinction, aren't they?
And in this, Kim, you spoken extensively of the control of the economy and the ANC being the leading or the facilitator of this situation that we find ourselves in. And in your perspective as a person who looks at this case that has been taking place, and you see that even the ANC government is not saying anything in relation to that matter. What would be your view in relation to the control of the economy in relation to the need or the desire or the demand of organizations that like AfriForum would want to say, we want to hoist the flag because it is a freedom of expression? What would be your view on that particular argument? Because it is a freedom of expression and therefore we must be allowed to do that in relation to the control of the economy, which you said earlier, it is controlled by the minority few whites.
Well, I think, I forget it now, I think it's a symptom of age where Frantz Fanon says, the white man wants to occupy everything. He almost takes the last breath out of a black person. And I'm misquoting horribly, but that's a sentiment. And that's what the ANC's done. So we have AfriForum who are just being facilitated easily by the ANC to just make sure that they control everything. And I think in one of my pieces, I said it's not only bad enough that white people occupy the land, but it's almost as if white people occupy the minds of black people. because there's an obsession with
Yeah.
whiteness. And I think what the PAC is very good at is they say, whites are welcome, they can come through, but they're not central. They, the central is around Black economic power, socialism, equality, but white people own everything in this country. And it's not just my opinion. You just have to look at the landscape of any economy, of any cultural dimension. I mean, even the fact that we're speaking in English now is symptomatic of just how much, my privilege prevails. And so there's just an arrogance, and we have a very weak government. I was at the ANC Land Summit. I mean, it's a contradiction in terms. And I said, mark the spot. The ANC, under an ANC government, we're never going to get land back. But I can tell you, at that summit, the main opinion leaders, the scribes, the people who were asked to make decisions were white people. There was a white man, far junior to the political leaders that were there, that was given the responsibility to summarize findings. So,
and this is what makes, sorry, Dr. Mantas, this is what makes people like Andile Mngxitama very angry when we talk about the issue of the land. And he's been one of the most consistent people in relation to the question of the land. Dr. Mantashe, I saw that you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the Constitution as a premise, the entire foundation of South Africa, I usually say, Kim, that if you wanted to build a round house, your foundation should be round. Otherwise, you don't know what you're building. If your foundation is square and you want to build a round house, you are no different from somebody who talks of a round square, which is total nonsense.
A round square.
And that's the challenge with the internal structure of the Constitution of South Africa. It does not begin from the premise that the land belongs exclusively to Africans, and that white people come to South Africa and live in South Africa on the basis of subordination to the will of the African majority rule. Now, secondly, when you go to the chapter 2, which speaks of the Bill of Rights, and this is to get closer to your question, Tano, the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights is predicated on a false framework, on a problematic framework. In other words, now the land is already in the hands of a settler. Now the settler has a right to express himself freely. Can you imagine this contradiction? You have this framework that gives him citizenship unconditionally, and then he now has the right to express his racism, and he has a right to flaunt and to constantly exercise arrogance, because he now needs to keep his flag. But you don't have a right to say one settler, one bullet, right?
Okay.
But he has a right to keep. He has a right to keep the statue of Paul Kruger with a gun, a gun pointing at my head on a daily basis. I mean, look at it. I mean, I usually say, but white people are still pointing us, at gunpoint, even at their death. I mean, imagine a statue pointing a gun at you at its death. See, so this demonstrates that, the whole idea of free expression presupposes that the conditions for free expression exist on both sides of the aisle, which is not necessarily the case. And that's where we differ philosophically and ideologically on the whole premise of free expression, because it assumes other things that it does not say when they say it. Yeah.
So therefore, even the foundation of the very same constitutional guidelines that are being used, as Kim has said earlier, they are, because we are a settler colony, we are a white country or a white control country. Therefore, even the interpretation of the law is going to be in line with those underpinnings of that whiteness. Kim, you speak extensively. Yes, Dr. Mantashe.
No, I was saying absolutely. Look at the book by two folks, Leroux and someone, talk about lawfare. How they characterize, pre-1994 to 1994. They call it a constitutional breach. Yeah, and this constitutional breach, actually, what they don't say, though, is that this constitutional breach is basically a carefully constructed white document pretending to be inclusive when it is, in fact, subtle. It carries subtle caveats that undermine the possibility of freedom itself. But of course, if you are a lay looker, you will not notice certain things in the document. I mean, because everyone is equal before the law, is that not so? So you will not notice all of those things. Yeah.
So what we are going to do now further is that we are going to ask very pointed questions that regard a very sharp and pointed answers in relation of going forward. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Mantashe, and ask you the hoisting of the flag, of the apartheid flag, which in my argument I have said that the 1994 flag is the same as the old South Africa flag because it was done by the very same National Party people. Is it important for you whether it is hosted in public or in private? Should AfriForum allowed to host it or not host it? For you, does it make any difference?
Well, I mean, my answer is yes and no. So because there are two dimensions of oppression here. There's cultural oppression and there's economic oppression arising as a consequence of dispossession. So it's yes and no. No, in the sense that if that's the only dimension that people care about, as it is the case, then it's a waste of time. But on the cultural side, in other words, you can't resolve the cultural side of oppression without resolving the economic side, which is dispossession and colonialism. Yeah.
And Kim, the current sitting president of the ruling government has not come out to stand for anything that the Black people in this country have complained about. In your perception, do you think that he is part and parcel of the central group of people who are so infatuated with whiteness?
Yes, I mean, I've said in previous interviews that he is, he's not, he's a media creation. And I've even said that I feel so sorry for the mainstream media because they're trying to hoist this man as a crusader, as a savior, but he's only propelling the interests of white people. And he's going to be disposable, like all Black people are to white people. When he's no longer doing the job, he'll be replaced by another Black president. But I was actually a mistake in an interview. I said he's the worst president we've ever seen in this country. And I actually meant post-democracy. But in retrospect, I think he's the worst president this country's ever seen because what he's doing to his own people, you'd expect white people to have no compassion for Black people. That's history's shown that. But for a Black president to do what he's doing to his Black people is just unforgivable. So without question, in my head, he's the poster boy of white monopoly capital. Apparently that's a word we're not allowed to use on media.
And we do have some young people who are of European descent or white South Africans who are watching this program on various platforms. What would be your advice to them, Kim?
Well, I think, the TRC was a problem because it never dealt with groups of people, it dealt with individuals. White people, there's nothing much white people can do, but we should just be forced to give reparations and to acknowledge privilege. There has to be full reparations, but it can't be one or two individuals. It has to be done as a collective, every single white person. And I must say, when I've spoken to white industry leaders and church people and whatever, there's absolutely no interest. So I've given up on white people. I suggest Black people do too. That may sound horrible, but it's the only thing I can say with honesty.
Thanks for that. Dr. Mantashe, on your side, what would you be making an advice to your African counterparts now in relation to the very same question that I asked?
Sure. The answers are found in Kwame Nkrumah and Robert Sobukwe. So those who are in power will never willingly give it away. They have always been forced in the past to do so. And our struggle is no exception. We have to force, our hand it's not going to happen by constitutional means. I saw parliamentarians pretending to govern in parliament, putting up a piece of legislation or piece of an amendment to Section 25, 2017, and then in 2021, it's gone. The whole thing is gone. It was a charade. It was a facade. So it's not going to happen through parliament. Anybody who thinks so is deadly mistaken. Honorval actually told us point blank, is that if you want the land in this country, you're calling for war. Damn right he is, but he was at least frank. The one thing I like about the Boer, he's frank. It's the Englishman who is less frank. You see, so what we have to appreciate as young people and people of this country, there's going to be a revolution in this, and it's not whether we want it or not, it's that it's going to happen. The question is, on which side will we be in that revolution? Will we be on the side of the oppressors or on the side of the revolutionary action?
Majority of the time, as we had been discussing in this conversation, I've noted that the flow of argument between the two of you seems to be flowing in the same direction when it comes to in agreement, whether partially or fully. Now, I want to give each of you a minute or so to ask each other on a very pertinent issue that you feel like the other one might have misrepresented, or you needed clarity on, or you feel like they want to. Let's start with you, Dr. Mantashe. You posed something to Kim.
Yeah, so I think the interesting Kim to ask him, is I don't know. Because we pretty much agree on a number of things. I wish, Kim, you disagree with me on very key issues.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but perhaps the question that I could pose, Tando, is why do you think that racism is so much taken for granted by white people that they shrug it off and they say, look, just move on. Just move on. We've gone past this. You guys just like, keeping into the past. Why do you think that they have this attitude towards the whole talk about racism? And perhaps what has been your transition from that mode of thought to your current mode of thought?
Thanks, Dr. Mantashe. Kim?
Thank you. I have to ask I have to answer it in probably a sad way, because as I've said before, you have to wonder if white people have any moral compass. I don't think it's that they don't know that they're being racist. I think that they do know, and that's even more tragic. But white people are very good architects of self-interest, and it's something that I don't think Black people have learned. Black people are still serving white interests, and white people are only interested in themselves. My transition, I don't know. I don't even know if I have it transcended. I've just tried to be honest. And I'm a total black sheep in the white community. And the journey is for me quite a lonely journey. But, I remain a settler. I remain part of the problem. And sadly, I'm treated still like a squire in a land that I've stolen, while African brothers and sisters are treated like pariahs. And it's such a tragedy. I think we're about to see something so terrible unfold. And perhaps in my last point, just to conclude from my side, people speak about, when I say things have to change, they say you wanting a revolution, you want violence. But white people don't even see the violence in the everyday system. We've had democracy has been a violent time, as much as colonialism and apartheid. The violence is there. That white people don't see it is a sad indictment on their lack of ethics.
And on your side, Kim, what would you like to ask Dr. Mantashe of the Deputy President of the PAC?
I would love to ask you so many questions, and it's been such an honor being on this platform with you and both of you. But I'd like to ask, what do you think is the most important thing from a cultural perspective for Black people who've been so stripped of their identity so cruelly. What is, like Biko speaks about an empty shell of a man. What is the most important thing to fill that up again?
Yeah. Look, I think, and this for me, Kim, I'm glad that you asked this question, because for me, this, as for the PAC, this is, the PAC talks of African personality, creating a new set of African species who can be proud of themselves, who can be proud of their history, who can see themselves in the pyramids of Egypt, and who can see themselves as, the architects of those great buildings, mathematicians, the bequeathers of medicine and bequeathers of mathematics to folks like Pythagoras. When people have lost a sense of themselves, they no longer believe in anything that regards them or that connects with them. They look to the enemy for inspiration. One of the things we need to do is we need to speak directly to how our education system looks like, because apartheid colonialism itself was able to evolve successfully through education that instilled a sense of self, a sense of superiority, and a sense of moral superiority on the white folk. What we need to do is to create a system of education that remodels completely the African species, that focuses on those dimensions of culture that have been stripped off of them over the past 360 years. And if you want to go further, you can go further over the past couple of, over 1,000 of years, actually. So we need an education system, Kim, that is going to begin, in the classroom to shape this new person, this personhood, this new identity of a proud African who believes in their own potential, who does not aspire to be white, to be like, but who lives as an African. And to build that African personality will take a lot of energy. We'll have to completely redo the entire curriculum. I mean, just my last point, and I'm sorry I have detained you.
Yes.
If you look at our curriculum, and I happen to be a teacher by profession, so if you look at our entire curriculum from grade R, and if you look at the US curriculum from the same grades right upwards, and you look at any country like China, what you see is how they embed historical pride, cultural revolutionary consciousness from that level right upwards. So you build a nation by the way you build a system of education. And to educate is to culture. And the way systems of education are culturing African people is such a way that it reproduces the status quo rather than creating a generation that challenges the status quo. So our education system effectively is reproductive as opposed to being transformative.
No, thank you very much for that, to both of you, for a wonderful discussion. And we know that you are also both the authors, but today we are going to be talking about Kim's book as well.
Yes.
Kim has written a great book, and it engages on a lot of things and a lot of honesties, which has provided a good understanding of how white people should respond to some of these things. Kim, in your work, in the work that you've done, just tell our people how to find your book and where exactly, what are the highlights of the book that you have written, so that people are able to go and find and read some of your ideas in that book.
Well, thank you. People can, if they're interested, they can get the book directly from me through Twitter at KimHeller3. But it should be available in most bookshops. I think Exclusive Books and the mainstream booksellers actually have reluctantly stocked it because
yes, they did.
So I've been glad. Actually, I was even on the bestseller list amongst the most dreadful writers on very apartheid related things. So I thank people for the support. And but yeah, I think at most bookshops, and I do mostly speak to the fact that in the new South Africa, it's all about white politics, that the tender of whiteness has just been extended, and that as thinking people, we need to keep engaging with the most inconvenient truths. I say that in the New Dawn, actually speaking the truth is a blood sport. And I speak about the effect that speaking out has had in my own life, because it's dangerous, actually. But
it is.
what I'll do is I can make 10 copies available for your readers, just as a thank you for being on this lovely platform. So I'll send you some copies as a thank you and appreciation of you and your wonderful listeners and viewers. Thank you.
That would be appreciated, Kim. And here is an appreciation also coming from Dongwe. She says, you are very much unfitted and bold. Well done on getting her to the platform. Let's make space for her in the PAC. Dr. Mantashe, you are being made to challenge there. But let us close it immediately without making any comments. I don't want to be in trouble about anything because we had promised that it is going to be an hour's discussion. But Kim, thank you very much for making the time and being in this program. We certainly hope that the conversation about these racist undertones of AfriForum, if they are undertones or the racist elements of the flag and the arguments that are presented, will find a further expression in the popular discourse. And we wish you all the best, and people are encouraged to go and get your book. Thank you very much for making the time for being with us. And to you, Dr. Mantashe, thank you also for being with us. And we know that load shedding has shown us flame. So both of you guys, all the best, and thank you very much. I love you, and I loved the discussion. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Colleagues and friends, those that have been watching with us this afternoon, you would notice that we had started a little bit late. We started at 6:30 because of stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 8 of load shedding, whatever it is. But we started a little bit late, and fortunately you were with us right up until the end. As a way of trying to give a context to what has been taking place over the past week, it has been clear that while the flag is not the most fundamental issue, but it has got elements that are important, especially to Black people. But also what we found out from our guest was that there is a bold expression of privilege, racism, and entitlement from those who want the flag to continue to be hoisted, whether it is in public or it is in private. For you guys who have been following us on Ponte Politique, go and find one of the episodes that we have done on the issue of the flag. Actually, we were making a comparison regarding the new Rainbow Nation flag and the old Rainbow Nation, the old flag. When we were making the argument, the conclusion in that submission was that at the end of the day, the flag that you find that is a Rainbow Nation flag is an inclusion or is an inclusivity of a colonial, imperialist, and apartheid flag. And therefore, that argument has been sustained by Kim Heller when she said South Africa is a settler colony and it is controlled by white people, and therefore Black people must focus on fighting the real things and leave the unnecessary things. Unnecessary in inverted commas, without negating the experiences of Black people. We thank you for making the time. Umtungwa uyengwayo, umalinge undima, unkumbuzo, umasikana, uthi, kuni, siyabulela kakhulu ngokuba kunye nathi kule nkqubo yanamhlanje. Nangomso. Please continue to support us. Sawuphinda sidibane in the upcoming week, where we will be discussing another reverting and an important discussion or a topic. We thank Brother Sobukwe, who has sent us a stream where he is saying he loves the the consistency of this platform, and he says he is loving the evolution of the program. And we appreciate that, Brother Sobukwe, and thank you very much also for making the time of being with us and watching with us. And please remember to follow us, remember to subscribe on YouTube so that the show can continue and grow and become the better and the better and the better and the better program. Njengoba benitshilo ke ndisatsho nangoku ndisathi busuku benzolo siyabulela enkosi kakhulu. Thank you very much.